So today I'm going to be doing a mic review. Yeah, I was contacted by a company called FIFINE about checking out one of their mics, and having never really done a mic review before, I figured why not? They offered to send it for free, full disclaimer. So I get the mic for free and I get to keep it, but they're not paying me to do this review, and their only criteria was that I put the name of the mic in the video title and that I link to the mic in the video description, link to their website. So yeah, I thought that was pretty fair to ask those things, and there was a particular feature of this mic that made me interested in checking it out. This last month has been pretty hectic and stressful for me work-wise. It's just been very busy, so it's actually quite nice to sit down today and do something a little more relaxed like this. So without further ado, here is the microphone. This is the Amplitank Tank 3 XLR and USB dynamic microphone, and the USB feature is why I was interested in checking this mic out, because I've never used a USB mic before. USB mics are typically aimed at, well, people who don't have an audio interface. You know, they want something at home or on the go that they can just hook directly up to their computer. Something that's, you know, just plug and play and easy to use. Particularly, I think, with like the home recording market, prosumer market, and podcasting market, which, you know, there are a lot of people doing that kind of thing DIY at home these days, and having something that's plug and play is quite convenient for that kind of demographic, I suppose. So yeah, you can see that the mic is clearly modeled after the Shure SM7B, or at least, you know, it has similar stylings to that kind of mic and is very much like a podcasting looking microphone. So it looks the part for, I guess, the market that it's trying to attract. The packaging, I think, is very nice. It's just, yeah, very simple, but yeah, it does the job. It looks like a quality product, and that's not me just saying that because I've been given this mic for free. I genuinely, you know, these are my genuine honest thoughts. It looks quality. Little instruction manual here. That tells you all the info you need to know about using the mic, both over XLR and USB. And here is the mic itself, along with a supplied USB cable. I always find it interesting that microphones, they don't typically come with an XLR cable, like maybe some cheaper mics do, but with any sort of USB device, we always expect it to come with a USB cable, but actually it's often quite annoying because we end up with millions of these like really little USB cables, but you can never find one when you need one. But yeah, this comes with quite a nice USB to USB-C cable. So it's USB-C there, but it actually has this nice little adapter which is attached to it, so you can't lose it. So that's quite a nice feature. But yeah, an adapter to USB-A, so you're covered whether you've got USB-C ports or USB-A. I imagine that this will work over USB 2.0. You know, it's not like a USB 3 specific device. The mic itself, it's got quite a nice weight to it. It feels like a solid product. You know, it's kind of reassuring, the heft that it has to it, and it's on a articulating little arm, again similar to the SM7B, and this is a front address microphone, so it's not, you don't talk into the side or whatever your sound source is. It doesn't pick it up from the side, it picks it up from the front, so you would talk into it like this. Yeah, and then for the USB functionality of the mic, you have some controls on the mic itself. So there is a headphone dial. So on the back of the mic, you've got your XLR port and then USB-C and a headphone port. So the headphone port basically allows you, if you're using this over USB. This won't work over XLR because, of course, then you're going into your audio interface and you'd monitor off your headphone output on your interface. But if you're using this mic over USB, if you need to hear yourself or whatever you're recording over headphones, you've got a level control over that headphone amplifier, and then you also have your gain, your level for your mic, the preamp, the mic inside the microphone, and also a mute button, which I suppose, if you're using this in the context of like a Skype call or something like that, having a mute button directly on the mic is quite handy. Obviously, in a professional recording application, like, in my situation, where I am normally recording people not even in the same room as myself, and I'm recording other people typically, all these features aren't very useful, and you don't need a mute button on a mic or anything. I understand the need for the controls on the mic, but I do think it detracts a little from and cheapens what otherwise is actually quite a nice looking microphone. It looks quite sleek, and looks like a quality mic, a professional level mic. Yeah, one thing I did know is that this doesn't seem to be user serviceable or like able to be serviced in any way, which if this develops a fault, purely just because there doesn't seem to be any way to open it. There's no screws on the back. There isn't a head basket that screws off so you can access the mic capsule. I guess for the sort of price point that this mic is at, more budget friendly price point, you're probably just going to replace this mic if it breaks or develops a fault, which in terms of the environment I think is kind of a shame, because it always feels a little wasteful to me. But practically speaking, with the cost of the mic, I suppose you don't really need to be able to service a mic like this. You'd just buy a new one. One nice touch is on the arm. You probably won't be able to see it on camera here, but this actually has both size thread mounts. So depending on where you're from, if you're using this with a mic stand, which you should be, this has both thread size adapters, the smaller one and the larger one, so you don't need to put any kind of adapter insert inside there, which you often do with a lot of mics. So that's a nice little touch. I quite like that, actually. Now we've taken a look at the mic, we'll get into some sound examples. I'm going to test this out both over USB and XLR, and I'm going to try it on a few different sound sources. I'm going to try it with my voice and maybe with some acoustic guitar and snare drum, and I'll compare this to the Shure SM7B, which is also what I have here in the studio, but I think is like a similar style of microphone, and we can see what the difference is between the two and the USB and XLR connections on this mic. Without any further ado, so this is the sound of my voice recorded through the Tank 3, going over XLR into one of the onboard mic preamps on my RME UFX3 audio interface. Yeah, overall first impressions sound wise, as you can hear, it's fairly unnatural and harsh sounding, I'd say, in the upper mid area, like your sort of 2 to 3K area, and I do think that that's something that will need softening a little bit with some EQ or something like that. So I do think that this mic is something that needs a fair amount of post-processing work in order to really sound the best it can. This is the mic completely flat right now as you're hearing it, although I will switch between some processing applied throughout this video segment, just so you can get an idea of what it sounds like with a little bit of EQ and compression and stuff like that. As you'll see, I'm using it with a pop filter, which I generally recommend recording vocals with a pop filter, but I do find that this mic is particularly susceptible to plosives. Not like overly so compared to other microphones, but I would say that it's quite susceptible to plosives, and you will need to use a pop filter with it, particularly with P sounds. It just seems to pick up a lot of that, like those bursts of air a lot. So a pop filter will help mitigate that, but of course it is something to bear in mind. Like if you were recording a video podcast with this mic, a pop filter, as you can see, is quite visually distracting when the mic is like right in front of me like this, and it can cover my mouth quite a lot. So something to bear in mind if you were going to use this mic for that sort of application. You might want to look at something else like the SM7B. Of course, you do have the comparative price difference there. The Shure SM7B is a lot more expensive, but I do think you get what you pay for, and you can hear the price difference there. You'll hear in a second. I'll switch to the SM7B, and you can get an idea of the difference in sound. This mic is a lot thinner sounding compared to the SM7B. It does have some proximity effect, but not as much as the SM7. It has enough that I think you can accentuate it with a bit of EQ, and it does kind of complement that low mid that, when you're recording like a podcast style vocal recording, you might want to emphasize that area a little bit just to like fill out the sound of a person's voice more. In the general mid-range, like below that 2 to 3K area, I'd say I quite like the sound of it. It's similar to the SM7B. Sounds like fairly complementary to my voice. But yeah, in that 2 to 3K area, it's quite harsh sounding and quite unnatural. And yeah, I think it's going to need a bit of EQ to help mitigate that. So just for reference, this is the mic without a pop filter. So pick up a penguin. You can hear hopefully the the issues that are there with plosives. And so this is the sound of the Shure SM7B. Again, with no processing applied, although I'll switch between some processing so you can get an idea of the differences. But yeah, to my ears, clearly this is the better sounding microphone, but of course it is a lot more expensive, so I guess you get what you pay for. But yeah, it is the better sounding mic, I think, particularly for like a podcast kind of application. We'll chuck a pop filter on, see the difference. So this is without a pop filter, plosives with the SM7B. Pick up a penguin. And then this is my voice through the SM7B with a pop filter. Pick up a penguin. I think the SM7B does handle plosives a lot better, so this is the better mic definitely for a video podcast application. So this is the sound of the Tank 3 over USB. I tried my best to level match it between the preamp on my UFX3 and the preamp on this. The thing I found with the preamp over the USB connection is that the level, you can need to turn it like almost all the way up to really get enough sensitivity from the mic, and then it kind of starts sounding good, but below that you just don't really get enough gain from it, and yeah, the mic just kind of thins out a little bit. At least that was my experience, just with limited testing. So yeah, it was a little hard to gain match it against my UFX3 preamp. Weirdly, I actually think in some ways the mic kind of sounds a little better over the USB connection, which surprised me a little bit. Let's just move this pop filter out of the way. We'll get some plosives, but I think it's going to look better on camera. So yeah, now you can actually see me talk to you a bit better. Hopefully you can deal with the plosives, but yeah, I think it sounded a little better over USB in some ways. Maybe that's just because the preamp built into the mic is kind of better matched to the mic. than the ones on my UFX3, which they do tend to be like, they're very clean and transparent, you know, about as clean and transparent as you can get, I'd imagine. So maybe they weren't particularly complementary to the mic, whereas maybe the onboard preamp in this mic over USB is a little more complementary to the sound of the mic. I don't know, but yeah, that kind of surprised me. I tried the headphone output on the mic, that works fine. There's plenty of level there as well, so yeah, more than fine using that feature on the mic. The mute button works as it should, so if I mute it now, so yeah, that works perfectly fine. So all in all, I think the USB functionality is you know, works as it should, and I think for somebody using it in this manner, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer really. Like, if you don't have an interface already, this was picked up by Windows instantly as soon as I plugged it in. I didn't need to install any drivers. It's very much plug and play, and my guess is it would be this same experience on Mac. My only sort of negative against the USB connection is that USB typically tends to like crap out over like past 5 meters in cable length, and the supply cable of this is about 3 meters, so you're really not going to be able to situate this mic as far as you would, you know, away from your computer than you would be able to over XLR, which if you're like me, where you're recording people in separate rooms to where your computer is, then the USB connection just isn't really going to work. That said, I feel like this mic maybe does sound its best over USB, unless you get it matched, you know, to a nice external outboard preamp that complements this mic nicely. If you don't have an audio interface, you're recording yourself at home, you want to start a podcast or something like that, given the cost of this mic, which it retails around £80 in the UK. Of course, that may change given, you know, whatever time you're watching this video, but at the moment, at the time of recording this video, it retails around £80, which I think, you know, the value for money you're getting for that, if you don't have an interface already and you just want something that's plug and play, you can get started recording a little podcast at home or whatever it is you're trying to record. Yeah, this is a great little mic. Is it the best sounding mic? No. Are there better options for the money? Potentially. The SM58, the Shure SM58 or SM57, they're a little more expensive. They're around £120. The Audio Technica AT2020, which I think is around 100, all can be found for less used. You know, you can pick them up around £50 used. The SE V7, they're all decent microphones around a similar price point, which, you know, may potentially arguably be better sounding mics. But I think this mic is totally fine, and with a little, you know, post work with EQ, you can get a decent enough sound from it. So just before I sign off on this video, I wasn't planning on doing this, but after hearing the audio, I just wanted to quickly share some of my thoughts from the live room on the sound of the Tank 3 on acoustic guitar and snare drum. I really didn't like the Tank 3 on acoustic guitar. I felt like the obvious overall presence and top end lift that the mic has just didn't complement the acoustic guitar at all. It sounded very unnatural, quite harsh and brittle in those upper mids and above that. The SM7B obviously sounded dull in comparison, but overall a lot fuller and more well-rounded, more natural, just more complementary to the sound of the instrument. So between the two, yeah, I would definitely pick the SM7B any day of the week. On snare drum, I didn't expect to be saying this, but I actually preferred the Tank 3. I think opposite to the acoustic guitar, the voicing of the Tank 3 was actually quite complementary to snare. It brought out some of that snap and overall air and like presence lift that I'd quite often find myself EQing in mixing on whatever snare mic I've used, and the SM7B would definitely need more EQ to get to that point. So I'm always looking for things that can get me closer to the sound that I want in the mix before having to do any EQ. So it just means I have to do less in the mix. So genuinely, I think I might actually try this out on snare top duties in some upcoming sessions, and yeah, I'll see how I get on. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of all these sound examples, and I'll see you again in the next video.